This is directed to the two mayoral candidates. This morning's Daily News reported on the water summit, including pumping water from the Snake River or drawing it from the Palouse River as top choices for solving our water deficiency problem. What is your opinion and what are the limitations on such a project? Linda?
The major limit is that is horrendously expensive. If we're talking about pumping water from the Snake up here, which we did in the 1970s, the 1980s, and the 1990s, and the 2000s as well. So it's a perennial issue that's discussed. The cost has not lessened. It's gotten greater. And the cost of even the Potlatch River is huge. So, you know, if we go in that direction, we're going to have major public money thrown at this. It's going to have to require money that we don't have. Where are we going to get it? Well, possibly from the federal government, but they're not a particularly reliable partner these days. So in that situation, we have some great difficulties. I think we have to return to a more efficient, effective use of the water that we have, the way that we use the water locally, and to make sure that we are using what we have in the most careful way.
Well, I was fortunate enough to be at Schweitzer Engineering last night and listen to the water. They had 4 alternative methods to use, and one of them, yes, was the Snake River, and they thought that might be the overall guaranteed volume of water, because the Snake River, after all, has a lot of flow in it. I don't know the difficulties other than, yes, that would be very spendy. Another one of those options was recharging our aquifer, and I had thought about that for a long time, and of course that makes some people very, very nervous. But we have a lot of runoff on this mountain every year, like last year, for example, the huge snows that we've got. So there's ways of recharging this aquifer, and I think that's a possibility that needs to be utilized. Walter mentioned about the reuse of water, drinking water and stuff, and they're working very, very diligently. And the Professor Greg up here at the University of Idaho, boy, I hope he wins that award, Walter, because that's really an earth-shattering thing for us in this area. One thing is for sure, we're going to have to do something. We need to do an alternative source. Yes, we can conserve, ladies and gentlemen, but we cannot conserve our way to prosperity over the next 50 years. Our community needs to grow. We need to have growth in this community, the 1%, and we don't grow 1% on the average if you look at the last 20 years or so. But in order to do it, in order to sustain what we need for 50 years from now, we need to go with an alternative source, because conservation won't just make it happen for us.
I would ask if any of the council candidates wanted to comment on that question.
So I too had the joy of sitting, visiting and listening to the conversations last night. Something that was very important that was mentioned both by the main speaker and by the gentleman who is putting forward the 4 alternatives is that this is the very tip of the iceberg of the conversation of what we are going to do as a region. We've come together very, very strongly as a region to take care of our airport realignment project. So we've already established that foundation that needs to be there in the moment when we start talking about something as emotional and as much of a hot topic as water is. So I would say to you, if it is at all interesting to you, please engage. Make sure that you make sure we know what your thoughts are. And read, you gotta read through some pretty serious science. But ask the questions, get your thoughts out there, start this conversation, be part of the conversation, please.
Several years ago, I was down in Texas at my brother's house on one of the reservoirs down there, and he took us for a boat ride. And we were passing an extremely large brick building on the shore, and I pointed to it and said, "What's that?" And he says, "That's Fort Worth's water intake." As the crow flies, Fort Worth is 100 miles from that intake. So bringing water from the Snake is just an engineering problem and a funding problem. Getting water rights is probably the biggest problem, the Snake question. But if you go out of here today and stop by the restroom and the toilet won't flush, or we run out of water in this room, you'd be amazed how fast they could pump water up here from the Snake. They're not going to just tell us to pack up and go away. And by the way, my memory of what the cost of that project is to bring the water up is about 1/2 of the airport project.
Yeah, people have hit on major points here, and especially the fact that if we're going to have a continuing, growing, thriving community, the aquifer is not going to support us forever. We can conserve and slow the use of that aquifer, but it's not going to last forever no matter how we cut it. So we do have to secure some additional water from someplace. And I think in the long term, the wisest option, which is pulling from the Snake River, is probably the one that's going to come to the forefront eventually. We can do what we can to slow the rate of aquifer depletion, but securing water rights and getting the water up here, regardless of how pricey it is going to be the foundation for the future growth of this community. And people moving here, especially with businesses, like to know that, yes, there is an ongoing water supply that's available to facilitate their businesses and their lives in the town.
Just briefly, the one thing I want to emphasize and re-emphasize and emphasize again is we cannot conserve our way out of this problem. For the next 50 years, and we don't have huge growth in this community, and Pullman either, but we have enough that conserving is not going to solve the problem. There were 4 alternatives laid out last night, and we don't know enough about any of them to know which is going to be the combination of the most cost-effective and the most reliable source. They're working on that, but it's going to be years. But just remember, conservation's not going to do it, and we are going to have to deal with this problem at some point in time.